Hello, nice to see you on my channel, Hearts and Shadows. Enjoy watching.
My name is Philip. What happened after my wife died pushed me to my limit. Right after we laid her to rest, my mother-in-law came at me like a vulture circling something dead. There was no space to breathe, no time to grieve. She didn't come to check on me. She didn't ask how her granddaughter was holding up. She didn't even cry at the funeral. It was clear she came for what my wife left behind. She thought I was clueless, and she believed she had it all figured out. She never expected what happened afterwards, and she wasn't ready. When I first met Madison, everything about her pulled me in. From our very first conversation, I knew there was something different about her. What really struck me, though, beyond how kind and smart she was her drive. Madison didn't just talk about big dreams, she chased them. At the time, she was still working in the corporate world, the kind of job most people cling to because of stability. But after we started dating, she said she was quitting because she had this idea for a business, and she believed in it enough to risk everything. Her kind of courage wasn't common. Now, that business didn't take off right away. There were months when nothing seemed to work, but she didn't give up. She would wake up early, go to sleep late, sometimes forget to eat, but never once complain. Most people would have burned out, but Madison almost seemed energized by the grind. I used to joke that she worked harder in 1 week than I did in a month. She just needed someone to believe in her. And I did. Watching her take that leap and struggle without bitterness made me respect her even more. It made me proud to be by her side. By the time we started having serious conversations about marriage, her business had already started picking up steam. She was making money and growing. Madison didn't need me to complete her. She chose me to walk beside her. And that meant everything to me. When I first started getting to know Madison on a deeper level, one thing stood out to me more and more: her family dynamics. That was complicated. She never really said much at first. Madison wasn't one to complain about her upbringing unless you asked directly, and even then, she'd brush it off with a smile like it didn't matter anymore. But I paid attention and listened between the lines. And over time, I came to understand a part of her that explained so much about why she was the way she was, why she worked so hard, why she never waited for approval, and why she never asked for help even when she clearly needed it. Madison had a younger sister, and from everything I saw and heard, that sister could do no wrong in their mother's eyes. It was obvious. Her mother lit up when the sister entered the room. But with Madison, it was different. Everything she did seemed to fall just short. If she got a promotion, her mother would ask why it took her so long. If she bought something nice for herself, it was a waste of money. Even when she tried to include her mother in her life, it was met with skepticism or backhanded remarks. It was like nothing she did was ever good enough. And you could see it in the way she tried harder, pushed more, stayed up later. It wasn't about proving the world wrong. It was about trying, just once, to hear her mother say, "I'm proud of you." I still remember the first time Madison took me to her family's house. I was nervous, but hopeful. I didn't expect a red carpet, but I thought I'd at least be met with polite curiosity. Instead, I got the sharp edges of a woman who, from the moment I walked in, sized me up like I wasn't worth her daughter's time. Her tone was cold, and her questions passive-aggressive. She corrected Madison in front of me. She questioned my job, even joked that she expected Madison to marry someone a bit more ambitious. I wasn't offended, honestly. I'd dealt with difficult people before. But what stung was watching Madison shrink into herself while it was happening, trying to laugh it off, trying not to let it show how much it hurt. Her mother was the kind of person who needed control to feel powerful. You could see it in the way she interrupted, in the way she dominated every conversation, and in how she never allowed vulnerability, just criticism disguised as concern. That visit told me everything I needed to know, not just about her mother, but about what Madison had endured most of her life. Her father, on the other hand, was a quiet man who was polite and observant. He seemed to be the type who kept peace by keeping quiet. He didn't say much, but when he did, it was always measured. I don't think he ever disagreed with his wife out loud, but I got the feeling he didn't always agree with her behind closed doors either. He gave off the impression of someone who had long accepted his role as the background voice in the household. Still, none of that really fazed me. I wasn't marrying a family. I was marrying a woman I respected, admired, and loved with everything I had. I saw the emotional scars, but I also saw the strength that came from them. Madison didn't let her past define her. She used it to shape her. And at the time, I believed that as long as we built our own life together, the shadows of that household couldn't follow us. I didn't realize then that some people don't stay in the shadows. They wait. They watch. And when the right moment comes, they show their true colors. After Madison and I got married, I had braced myself for the usual bumps most marriages face. Arguments over little things, different opinions clashing, the stress of figuring out how to live together as one truly. I won't lie, I expected some of that, especially since I grew up hearing how complicated married life could be. But with Madison, things were different. She surprised me. Not because she never had an opinion, but because of how willing she was to talk, to listen, to find common ground. We didn't sweep things under the rug. We sat down and talked, even if the conversation was uncomfortable. We planned everything together, and all of it felt like we were rowing in the same direction. 2 years into our marriage, we had our daughter. And let me tell you, something shifted in Madison the moment she held that little girl in her arms. It was like watching a missing piece snap into place. Madison loved our daughter in a way I can't fully describe. It wasn't just motherly affection. It was like she was pouring every ounce of the love she never got from her own mother into this child. I knew, without her saying a word, that she was healing herself through that love. As for me, I adored both of them. Just walking through the front door after the day's job and hearing my daughter's laugh or seeing Madison was my fuel and my peace. Over the course of 19 years, we built something solid, both emotionally and financially. I stayed in corporate and worked my way up. Madison's business, on the other hand, took off in ways even she didn't expect. She was smart with her decisions and relentless with her effort. Eventually, her income not only matched mine, but surpassed it. We invested wisely, saved aggressively, and never tried to live beyond our means. We didn't just survive, we thrived. And yet, even with all her success, Madison never fully turned her back on her mother. That always struck me. Despite how cold and dismissive her mother could be, Madison still found a way to help her out, paying for things here and there, sending her money when she needed it. Her mother rarely said thank you, and when she did, it sounded more like an obligation than gratitude. But Madison did it anyway, not for approval, but because it was who she was. That quiet generosity, even in the face of rejection, said more about her strength than any loud declaration ever could. Things didn't stay this way forever. A few weeks after our daughter had gone off to college, the house was quieter, and we were adjusting to a new rhythm. Then Madison got sick. She complained of bloating, discomfort, and fatigue. She had always brushed off symptoms like this as stress, or maybe her hormones being off for the longest. She'd always been strong, never one to panic or run to the hospital unless it was serious. So I had trusted her judgment, but this time it got worse. She started losing weight even though she was eating normally. There were days when she couldn't stand for long without holding onto something. I'd come home and see her lying on the couch with a tight smile on her face like she was trying to hide how uncomfortable she really was. But I could see it in her eyes. Something wasn't right. After enough pushing, she finally agreed to go in for a proper medical checkup. That's when the doctors found out she had ovarian cancer, which is at stage 4. I won't pretend I took it well. I was confused and scared. Madison tried to stay composed, but even she broke down when they started explaining how long it had likely gone undetected. The symptoms had been there. She just didn't know what they meant. She thought it was age, stress, or overwork. But it was cancer, and it had already spread. The doctors recommended immediate action. She needed surgery, first to remove as much of the tumor as possible, then multiple rounds of chemotherapy after that. That was the beginning of a long, painful road. We spent most of that year in and out of hospitals. She had surgeries, lost her hair, and was hooked up to IVs more days than I could count. I still had to show up to my job, But every day, I'd rush to the hospital afterward, sometimes spending the night in that tiny chair beside her bed. Our daughter came home when she could, which helped Madison emotionally, and my wife's father came around a lot, too. He was quiet, but dependable, never missed a weekend. A few other relatives trickled in here and there, offering help. But her mother and sister came just once. She showed up, sat at the edge of the bed like she was visiting a stranger, and left within an hour. No follow-up, no calls, no checking in. Madison never said much about it, but I saw what it did to her. After months of fighting, the treatment started to work. Slowly and painfully, Madison regained strength. Her appetite returned. Her blood counts improved. The scans showed progress. Watching her get back on her feet was like watching the sunrise after months of endless night. She was coming back to life. And when she felt strong enough, she went straight back to her business. That alone tells you the kind of woman she was. That recovery felt like a miracle. We knew the journey wasn't over, but for that moment, we were breathing again. It felt like God had given us back what we thought we were going to lose. A little over a year after we thought she had beaten cancer, it came back with no warning this time, and no slow build-up. The cough lingered too long, and her complaining about how tired she felt after doing something simple became constant. I tried not to panic, but the fear crept in before the diagnosis did. And when the results came back, it was exactly what we prayed we wouldn't hear again. The cancer had returned. She was hospitalized almost immediately. Everything got worse at a speed that made my head spin. Within months, she could barely walk without someone holding her up. The fatigue was brutal. She'd sleep for hours and still wake up looking like she hadn't closed her eyes in days. Pain became part of her daily life, and some nights I could hear her crying softly beside me, trying not to wake me. But I never slept. I heard every sound. Our daughter, bless her heart, came home as often as she could. She'd bring little things like flowers, her mom's favorite scented lotion, or old photos to make her smile. But she had school, and we both insisted she stay on track. So most days, it was just me and her. And I was okay with that. I became everything: the cook, the nurse, the driver, the cleaner, the listener, the one holding her hand when the medication made her dizzy or when she'd cry from frustration. Then one night, while I was helping her settle back into bed, she told me to take over the business. She said, "It's doing better than your job. We both know that. Don't let it fall apart now. Just do what I would do." I was scared. That business was her baby. But I agreed, and from then on, I kept her updated on everything. I ran it like she would, and she was proud. Even on days when she couldn't keep food down, she'd still ask how the warehouse was doing, or whether I followed up with the supplier she had warned me about. And I didn't just run the business, I took care of everything else. I cooked her bland meals to keep her stomach from reacting badly. I cleaned up after her, helped her in and out of the shower, and rubbed her back when the pain meds weren't enough. She never had to ask. I just did it, because she was mine, and I wasn't going to let her carry this burden alone. Our daughter chipped in whenever she was home. She was torn as she wanted to be there full time, but we both knew she had a future to build. One day, her mother showed up, unannounced as always. She looked around like she expected to find a disaster. Instead of offering help or kindness, she took one look at how I was handling things and started criticizing everything. Said the food I made was too plain, that I should be hiring a professional instead of fumbling through it like a rookie. She even made a comment about how maybe Madison wasn't getting better because I wasn't doing things right. I didn't argue. What was the point? That woman had made up her mind about me before the day I married her daughter. And deep down, I think she was looking for an excuse to blame me for anything that didn't go her way. But I didn't let it get to me. I focused on what mattered, making my wife feel loved, seen, safe. I stayed because I loved her. And until her very last breath, that love never wavered. She passed in her sleep quietly. I was right there, beside her. I had been for days. Watching her fade wasn't new anymore, but nothing, and I mean nothing, prepares you for the moment when the person you love most in the world just stops breathing. I don't know how long I stayed there holding her hand. I think I was hoping that maybe, if I held her tightly enough, I could keep some part of her here. But the truth was final. It wasn't just her life that ended in that room. It was our life, the plans we had, the routine, and the comfort of knowing she was always just a room away. All gone. I called our daughter first. I barely managed the words. She dropped everything. When she got home later that day, she didn't say much. She just walked in, hugged me, and we cried. The funeral came a few days later. That whole week was a blur, people coming in and out of the house, casseroles we didn't touch, polite condolences that felt too shallow for what we were feeling. The service itself was beautiful in its own way, but I barely remember it. My mind was somewhere else. It was at the graveside that her mother finally cornered me while I was holding my daughter. Not to comfort us, but to ask about my wife's things. Did she have insurance? Where are her savings kept? What about her jewelry? Those were her exact words. I just stared at her, without a word leaving my mouth. Because what do you even say to something like that? I wasn't about to turn a funeral into a screaming match. She waited for a response, didn't get one, and that's when she leaned in slightly and said, "I'll fight you for everything." Then she turned and walked away. A week after Madison passed, the lawyer called me and our daughter to schedule the reading of her will. It felt too soon, honestly. But before we met with the lawyer, I asked him to call Madison's mother too. I figured she deserved to hear whatever was in the will directly, even if deep down, I wasn't sure what to expect from her. At that point, I had no idea what Madison had written in the will. We'd never talked about it in detail, maybe because part of me didn't want to accept that we needed to. But I should have known she'd think ahead. She always did, especially when it came to protecting the people she loved. When her mother arrived at the house, she just strolled in like someone who was about to take possession of something. I remember her eyes scanning the living room. It was like she'd been told to come and collect. The lawyer didn't waste time. He opened the file, took a deep breath, and explained that Madison had updated her just weeks before she died. He said it was done in full awareness, in the presence of all the legal witnesses necessary to validate the document. She had gone out of her way to make sure there would be no loopholes or confusion. The lawyer read that Madison had named me, and only me, as the sole beneficiary of everything she owned. Her business, her shares, her savings, her jewelry, even the house. There wasn't a single line in the will that included her mother. And then the lawyer pulled out a handwritten note she'd added. Just one sentence. "I know what Mom is like. Protect yourself." Those words hit me hard because she knew. It was like she saw this coming. She didn't want her mother twisting anything once she was gone. Across the room, her mother sat completely still. At first, she didn't say a word. Her eyes darted from the lawyer's face to the will in his hands, then to me, and back again. Then, when she finally opened her mouth, it was to accuse. She said Madison couldn't have known what she was doing, that she must have been medicated, that I manipulated her, that I pressured her into cutting her family out. Then she looked at me and called me greedy and selfish, said she would fight me everywhere, and that this wasn't over. But what she didn't understand or accept was that I didn't even know what was in that will until the lawyer read it out loud. And even if I had, there was no way I could have influenced Madison. That woman was stubborn as hell when she made up her mind. If she decided to leave everything to me, it wasn't because she was tricked. It was because she trusted me. When my mother-in-law said she would fight me for everything, I didn't think she meant it quite so literally. But she did. Just a few weeks later, Madison's mother followed through on her threat and dragged me to court. She claimed the will wasn't valid. She told anyone who would listen that I had manipulated Madison, that I took advantage of her while she was sick and vulnerable. In her words to the court, I was too smart and sneaky to be trusted. The legal battle went on for months. She tried every trick she could think of. She tried to gaslight me, talking like I didn't really know what Madison would have wanted. She tried to twist the story, painting me as some greedy man who was only with Madison for the money. But what she didn't know was that I had come prepared. I had copies of the emails Madison had sent to her lawyer. In her own words, she laid out exactly what she wanted and why. I had audio recordings where she spoke about her decisions. She said, "I want my husband to have everything. He's the one who stood by me. He's the one I trust." I had signed letters. I had medical evaluations, signed by professionals, proving that Madison was in her right mind when she updated the will. Everything was done legally. So when her mother claimed in court that Madison was too sick to know what she was doing, the evidence said otherwise. She embarrassed herself in that courtroom, and the judge saw through all of it. He asked her a simple question: "Where were you when your daughter was fighting for her life?" She didn't have an answer. He scolded her, firmly. Then he dismissed the case. After that ruling, she vanished. That was the last time I ever saw her. Maybe she finally realized that this wasn't some fight she could win. Not with manipulation, not with lies, and definitely not by bullying the one person her daughter trusted most. With all that behind me, I turned my focus to what mattered: my daughter. She was close to graduating from college, and I knew she needed me to be steady. I was determined to make sure she didn't lose both parents, even if one of them was now only with us in memory.